Hey, so blessed to be with you, Kevin Miller in the morning, KIDO Talk Radio. Don't forget your chance to win. K-Millie's Cash is right here, 6 a.m., 8 a.m., and 3 p.m. with the great American Sean Hannity. Listen for the code word. When you get the code word, go to KIDOTalkRadio.com. Type it in. The more code words you get, the more chances to win up to $5,000. Joining us now, Jenny Beth Martin from the Tea Party Patriots. Jenny Beth, how are you?
I am great. It's so good to be with you.
Good to be with you. Big event coming up that you'd like to let folks know about, celebrating 10 years of the Tea Party.
That's correct. We celebrate our 10th anniversary of the Tax Day Tea Party on Monday, April 15th. And to do that, we are hosting Stop Socialism, Choose Freedom rallies across the country. So far, we have over nearly 400 people who have signed up to host one of these rallies to stand for freedom and to stop socialism across the country. Nearly 400 people. People can find information about it at teaparty10.com.
Let's talk about the threats to America. In the old days, we worried about the devious little libs. We worried about existential threats. You and I grew up in an age where we were taught socialism was evil. The threats of communism really repelled during our time of the Cold War. Yet today, the threat is internal. The young people's minds corrupted, thinking socialism is a good thing.
That's true. We're having to fight this in a way that we didn't have to when I was a kid. I grew up in the 80s, and President Reagan was president. We were in the middle of the Cold War, and we understood the difference between liberty and freedom and a free market society versus what we see with socialism and communism. But right now, today, there are many people who are millennials and younger who don't remember the Cold War, don't understand the inherent dangers of socialism, and see that what we have been doing in America, it really does have some problems. I mean, let's face it, the Tea Party wouldn't have stood up 10 years ago if we didn't think that the bailouts and the cronyism that was going on in our government, if we thought that was okay, we never would have been protesting 10 years ago. So I agree. There are problems. The problems are because of cronyism, not because of free markets, and we need to explain that to people.
Well, and then we take a look at the kids of today, unfortunately, have been taught that America is bad, really brought up on divisive issues, not unity. And we go back to, I always think, Jenny Beth, that the presidents are like a surrogate father for the generations. For our generation, it was Reagan. For others, it was Clinton. It was President Bush. The Barack Obama generation taught that, the police are bad. America, we've got to apologize for, and we still are fighting that remnants. And you go to the message of Reagan and, just bringing people together. It was certainly the furthest thing of what we have today, which is identity politics.
That is very true. I think that with President Reagan, one thing that we saw is that Americans at that time may not have agreed with everything that President Reagan did. And Democrats and Republicans did not always agree, of course, but we were unified as a country, standing up to the existential threats that existed towards the country. We didn't find those threats within our country. We found them on the outside of our country. What we're seeing, you're right, what we saw under President Obama was much different than that we should be afraid of the police. It created a sense of distrust in the very people who are charged with being the peacekeepers in our country. That's what police do. And then and it continues. You're right, there were identity politics and all sorts of other issues. It's very, very divisive, and people would argue that President Trump is also divisive. He's divisive because he's trying to get the things that are so divisive about what he says is that he wants America to be great again. He loves our country, and somehow loving our country and wanting it to be a great country is divisive. And we have to find a way to solve that so that we can all be proud to be Americans and be united in the fact that we are Americans.
Jenny Beth Martin joining us, Kevin Miller, KIDO Talk Radio, 107.5 FM, 580 AM. What do you say, Jenny Beth Martin from the Tea Party Patriots, what do you say to people that say the Tea Party Patriots is so over?
Well, I would say to people first, we are not over. We've made a difference, and clearly we're making a difference still with nearly 400 people who have stepped up to volunteer to hold Stop Socialism, Choose Freedom rallies on Monday. So they're just not correct about that. The other thing is that we don't always have to be in the street protesting to make a difference, and we shouldn't be. There's a time and a place for everything. If all we ever did was show up in the street protesting, then we would not have been able to work to get people elected who share our values, to find out that sometimes they don't share our values once they get in office and they lied to campaign, so we have to figure out how to hold them accountable. And then we have President Trump in the White House, and he ran on our values and championed so much of what we talked about the previous 8 years before he became president. So I'd say that first they're wrong, and then if they say, well, whatever happened to the Tea Party, I'd say, go look in the mirror. Figure out what you're doing, because the Tea Party, we're not, I'm the co-founder of Tea Party Patriots, but the fact is the Tea Party isn't new in America. It's nearly 250 years old. Our founding fathers founded the Tea Party movement, and we're just passing this torch of freedom from one generation to the next. And it's up to every one of us to be vigilant and to guard that freedom and that liberty so that we have it from our generation and pass it to the next generation.
Indeed. What's at stake, though? We go back to what we're up against in this indoctrination of the kids. You have kids, and we could call Ocasio-Cortez a kid. I mean, obviously, she has a different view of America than the rest of us with this new Green Deal. And you've got the other one who's saying that Israel is bad, calling Stephen Miller a terrorist, Representative Omar. And these are young people. Are they the outliers, or is this something, a trend that we should be looking out for?
Well, I think it's a trend we have to guard against. So I'm not one of the people who generally makes a lot of fun as Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. I don't agree with every policy that she has, and sometimes it's hard not to laugh at some of the things that she says. But the fact is, the thing that we need to pay attention to is that she sincerely believes a lot of this. And she thinks the Green Deal is going to save the planet. Yet the Green Deal has been costed out at $93 trillion over 10 years. And that is $284,403.67 for every man, woman, and child in this country over the next 10 years. We can't afford this. And the fact is the planet's not going to end in 12 years from now. So we have to find a way to communicate that to her and to people like her so that they understand that what they're asking for will take our freedom away. And if we don't have freedom in America, we're not going to have freedom across the globe. We're the people who lead the way in preserving freedom for the entire world, not just for Americans, but for the whole world, because we set that example. And I'm concerned because she sincerely believes this, and I think that is the kind of thing that the result of what kids are going through in high school and college today. What we're looking at with her is the end result of the education system, and we have to find a way to get back in there into our educational system and make sure that our children understand what is great about America. And I have teenagers, they're in 10th grade. They're about to take the AP World History exam in a few weeks. I understand what they're being taught because I'm listening to the videos that they're watching. I'm seeing their textbooks, and it's very concerning. Thankfully, where I live, they have a teacher who puts a bit more of a slant on it. Like she mentioned that socialism goes against human nature to students in my children's class. But I don't think that most kids across the country are getting that.
Exactly. Jenny Beth Martin joining us. Kevin Miller here, KIDO Talk Radio. Let's go back to the Tea Party Patriots, and the vilification of the media. Thankfully, we have President Trump that you've met and you've spoken with. that has come in to save the day, but the media is not our friends.
No, the media is not our friends. The liberals in Congress are not our friends. The liberals as government bureaucrats are not our friends. And they don't, especially the bureaucrats and the government contractors and people who rely on the government and treat the government as if it is a natural resource, our tax dollars as if it is a natural resource, which is what happens in the Washington, D.C. area. They do not want President Trump to be successful because they understand that if he cuts government, if he reduces regulations, if he reduces taxes and puts the onus for GDP growth back in the private sector where it belongs, that they don't get as much not free tax money, but tax money. They're going to have to figure out a way to provide for their families without relying on all of us. So they have a very vested interest in preventing him from being successful. And the media is against him, and the liberals in Congress are against him. So it's amazing the amount he has been able to accomplish with everything that has been thrown against him. And I respect the fact that he hasn't backed down. He just keeps fighting, and he's like, okay, I'm awake today. What have you got? Throw me your best shot. I'm ready to take it, and I'm going to keep going. I know what that's like. I've been vilified, and the Tea Party has been vilified. The playbook they're running against Trump, they ran against us as well. And sometimes it's hard to withstand those kind of attacks. And President Trump, he's not afraid of it, and I appreciate that about him.
So let's go back to tax time, and let's go back to the birth of the Tea Party Patriots, right here. Kevin Miller, KIDO Talk Radio, Jenny Beth Martin. How important is it to honor the past and to protect the future?
Oh, I think that it is incredibly important to pay attention to what we did in the past, look at why we stood up 10 years ago, why our founding fathers stood up almost 250 years ago, and that was for economic freedom and personal freedom. And we also stood up because we want a debt-free future in our country. Clearly, we are not headed towards a debt-free future right now, so we still have a lot of work to go with that. But when you look at the Green New Deal, we can see one path for our country, which is going to be even more debt, take away personal freedom and economic freedom, or we can go with what the Tea Party stands for, and that is to hold, preserve, and expand personal freedom and economic freedom. And so what we did in the past, we still have to stand up for today. And what our founding fathers did in the past, we're still standing up for today. We have to fight the same battles over and over, oftentimes because we're fighting for freedom. It's a timeless fight. Every generation has to fight this so that we set the terms for how we are going to live in the society we will live in. And in that, it's timeless, and it's why we have to continue to stand up today.
Jenny Beth Martin, we appreciate you. Thank you, Tea Party Patriots. If people want to get a hold of you, more information about the rally, what can they do?
Well, thank you so much, Kevin, for having me on. And they can go to teaparty10.com. Again, that's teaparty10.com. And there are 2 people who've signed up to host rallies in Idaho.
Fair enough. Thank you, Jenny Beth Martin. Take care.
Thank you.
580-5436, 580-KIDO. There we have it, the expose of the press. Coming up next, a mainstream media young lady who was the belle of the ball when it comes to being in the mainstream media. Now she's out because she told the truth about the devious little libs and their attacks on our president. All that and more next. Kevin Miller, KIDO Talk Radio. And blessed to be with you, Kevin Miller in the morning. Phone numbers 580-5436, 580-KIDO. So recently our great friend Laura Ingraham had a chance to speak with not Laura, but Lara Logan. Lara Logan, of course, formerly of CBS News, of 60 Minutes, a war correspondent that has been decorated for bravery in the field of reporting. Obviously, remember what happened to her in Egypt, where she was attacked by a group of folks that were of the Muslim Brotherhood, sexually assaulted. That wasn't really reported that much because that would go against the narrative of Barack Obama at the time. Remember back in the day, let's go back to those thrilling days of yesteryear where Barack Obama, the president at the time, he was all about the Muslim Brotherhood. You remember that? The Muslim Brotherhood. So Laura Logan decided she'd had it with CBS and said, look, I'm out. Peace out, everybody. So now she can't get a job. Never mind. She's one of the most decorated journalists, proven beyond a shadow of a doubt of bravery and everything else. And yet now she can't get a job. So she had a chance to catch up with Laura Ingraham. You remember Laura Ingraham, by the way, when you hear Fox News on the radio, when you hear Fox News at all in the Treasure Valley, you're listening to Kevin Miller and KIDO Talk Radio. Well, you're listening to KIDO Talk Radio. Here, Laura Ingraham asks Laura Logan about the press and their bias against President Trump.
Self-created NGO. It's unbelievable.
Well, Laura, there are a few journalistic questions that I would want asked, right, if I was reporting on this, which is, where did the previous administrations put the children that they detained? I mean, they also put them in prison, right? How do I know this? Because as a reporter for 60 Minutes, I was approached by UNICEF. I had meetings with them about doing a story. They were so concerned about the number of children in detention under the Obama administration that they asked 60 Minutes to look into doing a story on it. So,
by the way, this happened under Obama, and yet there was no coverage. Obama put people in cages, and it was a good thing. More on that in a minute. KIDO Talk Radio, 107.5 FM, 580 AM. Kevin Miller in the morning. Time to get you to work safely and on time. Good morning, Dave. Thank you, Larry. When last we left here at KIDO Talk Radio, Laura Logan saying this is going on since the Obama administration, and yet you have people saying Kristen Nielsen will be forever known as the woman who put the kids in the cages. Obama put people in cages as well.
this isn't the first time it's happened, but it's not being treated the same. And anytime there's not a consistent standard in the reporting, that's a red flag for me as a journalist.
And Lara, and the root causes of this also not being covered, why this is happening, why there's this flow into the country, why the caravans. So none of that is really being looked at. Everyone's empathizing with the poor families, and I understand that, but that's not really empathizing is not. It's not really reporting. It's empathizing. It's something completely different. I also want to get your thoughts, Lara, on the president's decision to skip the annual White House Correspondents' Dinner, third year in a row now. What about that? He's going to hold a rally instead.
Well, why would the president want to go to a dinner which is full of a room full of people who have made it clear that, many of whom have made it clear that they want him removed from office? And that they don't just hate him, they see him as unfit. And they've made, you know, this is not a two-way street. If the press is allowed to criticize Donald Trump, then why isn't he allowed to criticize the press? That's the way I look at this. This is about what the First Amendment is about, and this is about everybody's rights. So, you know, would you go to a dinner with a bunch of people who made it very clear that they were your enemies? I mean, it doesn't make sense for him. It's not going to change the coverage. I mean, I've skipped the dinner for the past few years because they've become very partisan affairs.
And there you have it. If the press can criticize Donald Trump, why can't Donald Trump criticize the press? Remember what your mom used to say, what your dad used to say. Maybe they say that to you now, no matter how old you are. Boy, you could dish it out. Boy, isn't that funny? You can dish it out, but you sure can't take it. And that's what we're seeing here with the media and their double standard reporting. And it is not reporting. As Sean Hannity said, journalism is dead. It's all about promotion, emphasizing with folks. And we see the results of this, where we have people saying yes to socialism. That has to break everyone's heart in America today, when you have our beautiful young people being brainwashed into thinking that socialism is a good thing. We have fought against it. We have taken those people down, and we will continue to do that both externally and internally. And that's what we're here for each and every morning. You take a look at what's going on in Idaho. You've got this bill, the initiative bill, which is very fascinating if you're into the inside skinny on politics. Most of us will never really understand it. And the looming threat. Look, we smacked down hemp. It was this program, or better for worse, that aired the opposition to hemp. Everybody else in the state, everybody else on the radio, everybody else on television, everybody else in the newspaper They wanted the hemp because secretly they want us to join the Sith Lords in bringing in marijuana to the state. This is the program. You are the people that stopped it. Now they're coming back with another watered-down hemp legislation. But let your heart not rest. We've got a big issue, and it's called marijuana, and they're coming for us. Are you willing to stand? Kevin Miller, KIDO Talk Radio. Good morning, Maggie. Rolling on the right side. Gotta love this. The crazy, wacky Iranians are at it again. It's 1979, unfortunately. All over again. Here we have it. They're chanting death to America. Why? Because the president had the guts, the intestinal fortitude to call them out and say, y'all are a bunch of terrorists, right? You all are a bunch of terrorists, and we're not going to give you money. We're not going to sit back and pacify you. We're not going to appease you. And the Iranians, led by the mullahs, are taken to the streets, and they are not happy. They're not happy little Iranians. Who knows what's going to happen next? But you got to give it to the president. Very different. A very different outlook, as we talked about earlier with our own Rachel Sutherland here on KIDO Talk Radio, of how the Obama administration treated the Iranians. And, of course, now people are saying, well, this has nothing to do with it. All they're trying to do is to pump up Bibi Netanyahu. Can we just report the news accurately? Iran has sponsored terrorism for quite some time. You remember Pastor Saeed Abedini, right? You remember we used to have his wife on Nagmate on all the time. In fact, I think I saw her at the mall the other day, hanging out. And they kidnap people. They kill people. They do all these crazy things. And all we try to do is to be their friends. That doesn't make sense, does it? Of course not. This goes back to those folks taking our people back in the day. And something has to be done about it. Again, I love this. Iranian lawmakers convening, chanting death to America. Like I said, it's 1979 all over again here on KIDO Talk Radio. When you think about it, at 580-5436, 580-KIDO. Think of, I mean, when's the last time that we've seen this chant? And remember, didn't we just give them $150 billion, right? Isn't that right? Didn't we give them $150 billion? Crazy. Well, at least they could chant not death to America, right? I mean, let's face it, you get $150 billion that was owed to you year in and year out. I think you'd be a little bit more grateful, right? But no, the Iranian lawmakers, by the way, they're calling us the terrorists, right? Let's take a listen from our friends at The Hill. And that is a music bed. Let's go to Ernst Roast. Ernst, good to have you with us here on KIDO Talk Radio.
Thank you very much. It's good to be on the show.
All right. Now, you're from South Africa.
That's correct. I'm from South Africa, although I'm currently in Washington, D.C. as part of a liaison tour to garner support for our campaigns regarding what's happening in South Africa.
It doesn't look good for white people in South Africa, does it?
Well, there are some serious problems in South Africa, and the main reason why we are currently in the U.S. is to get support regarding the protection of property rights in South Africa, and also the violence on South Africa's farms, which is a very serious problem, of which I've written a book, which we will be handing out to people in the U.S. as we are here.
Right. If you could answer the question, though, it doesn't look good for white property owners in South Africa, does it?
Well, no, it doesn't, because there's a push by the South African government to expropriate private property without compensation. And the claim is there is, although many in government would deny this, there is unfortunately a strong racial element to this. We had, for example, one of the cabinet ministers in South Africa making the statement, the public statement, that if or when they expropriate.
Yeah, let's just cancel him. He was a good boy, but I think he got excited about the phone. Basically, Ernst wrote a book, Kill the Boer, Government Complicity in South Africa's Brutal farm murders. And essentially what you're having in South Africa that is not being reported is that you have white landowners, farmers being killed, and the South African government seizing the land from these white farmers. Remember apartheid and everything else, and everybody wanted to get along. It is crazy when you're thinking about this. You've got the Hitler of South Africa tells white people he won't kill them yet. Your time is up. And the rest of the media ignores this stuff, and it's going on. I wish that it weren't true, and I wish that Ernst would have respectfully figured out how to use the phone. But we will move on. Phone number's here, 580-5436, 580-KIDO, and, of course, trouble on the border. In addition to that, some of the other news that's trending today from the KIDO Talk Radio studios is something that, you're not going to hear anywhere else for quite some time. Let's go back to, shall we? Let's go back to this Iranian story. So here we have the Iranian lawmakers chanting death to America because the president of the United States had enough guts to call them out. How many of us grew up, whether we're old, whether we're young, whether we read about it in the history books, with the Iranians taking our hostages in 1979? Right? And the Iranians have always stuck it to us. Right? So the president of the United States calls them what they are. The Revolutionary Guard, as we know for years, is a terrorist group. They kidnap people. They break the law. They smack people around. Look at what they did to good old Pastor Saeed. They tortured him because he loved God. They said, Pastor Saeed, you and your Christian folks, you don't come back here anymore. Well, Pastor Saeed was moved by the faith. Pastor Saeed was moved by the faith. And he went in there. And he was tortured. And he did that for God. He didn't do anything wrong. He was an American citizen. And that's what they did to him. So President Trump says, all right, Iran, no more money. No more nuclear weapons. We're coming after you. And so now the Iranians have declared that our brave servicemen fighting in Afghanistan, by the way, unfortunately, we've lost a few this morning, are terrorists. These are the guys that brought in the IEDs in Iraq. These are the guys that funded Al-Qaeda, Hezbollah, ISIS, although now they're fighting ISIS. Shady folks, the mullahs. Of course, we can say that in America. We can't say that in Iran. And by the way, before we get to your phone calls, let's just honor 4 Americans, including 3 soldiers that were killed in a roadside bomb in Afghanistan. 4 U.S. residents were killed and 3 suffered injuries in a roadside suicide bombing in Afghanistan. These folks were killed outside Bagram Air Force Base, where members of the U.S. military and a civilian contractor, now the names haven't been released, were out doing their thing, working to secure liberty in that country, and they were killed by a suicide attack. The Taliban claimed responsibility for the attack, which brings the total of U.S. citizens, residents, soldiers killed in Afghanistan this year to 9. That compares to 13 that were killed in 2018. And it goes back to Afghanistan, as they call it, the graveyard of empires. And a thought for you at 580-5436, 580-KIDO. Is it time for us to leave Afghanistan? Much more on that in a minute. And the idea of retaliation, yes, we should retaliate. And why has Donald Trump been successful in defeating ISIS, Al-Qaeda, and the Taliban? Because he let our military do their job, which is to kill people. Kurt in Boise with Kevin Miller, KIDO Talk Radio. Good morning, Kurt.
Couple of things that you guys have been talking about this morning. The Iranians are just like the Democrats, man. You know, they get their money and then they start to whine and want more. Where our guys are over there protecting our American interests, but we're the terrorists. So they're just like the Democrats when they turn it around. And now I'm sure the Democrats, just like the Muslim new Congress lady, she's anti-Semitic, and so they're just trying to work all the sides now. what used to be right is wrong, and what's wrong is now right. I'm just confused.
No, I totally agree with you. That's why, we do our very best to try and right the wrongs that are going on here. You've got Booker with his reparations bill. You've got people saying, oh, if we're just good to the Iranians, they'll leave us alone because America is inherently bad. You've got what's going on in South Africa, and I'm sorry that Ernst couldn't figure out the phone because that is not being reported, where you have farm owners doing their own thing, killed, their land taken from them because of race.
Right, and you know what's going to happen, brother? It's going to start happening here. You're going to have I don't know if you remember La Raza back years ago was wanting to take over California back and Texas back and
right.
New Mexico, and so you're going to have that happening. Then Booker's going to want to give reparations, and then who else is going to want money? I mean, they're not only trying to turn this country into socialism, but they're going to try to bankrupt it and break up our union. I mean, I truly believe that's why so many people are moving to Idaho, is to get out of California and these other crazy states. And like we were talking earlier also, that outside influences trying to get Brad Little to sway one way or the other, I just don't know anymore. It's just so, if you really sit down and think about it, it's almost sad.
Well, and there are two ways you can go. You can retreat and do your own thing, which a lot of people do, and I don't blame them, or you can choose to, take the red pill instead of the blue pill and fight what's going on here. But you go back to La Raza, and I can remember 20 years ago, I would go back and forth with these guys when I was in another state. But you take a look at what La Raza is doing, they're probably already there when they're talking about repopulating those southwestern states that they not only believe, but their mission statement is to bring them back into Mexico. Right.
I totally agree with you. That's what I'm saying. I mean, I love our union as our great country. I'm just afraid it's going to splinter because all these people don't want to be Americans. They want their nationality first instead of American Africans or American Hispanics or American Italians. Everybody puts their nationality first. And that's what's changing this country. Back when they came in, the immigrants through Ellis Island, they wanted to be Americans. Sure, they spoke their language, and sure, they had their culture, but they thought of America first. These people nowadays look down at America. So when they ruin it, what are they going to have? They're going to have another Venezuela or countries just like that or the old Cuba. I mean, so you're absolutely right. We need to pick our sides and stand up, and that's what I love about your show. Is these people come and you talk about it, and you try to do the best we can, and I hope we can move forward and maybe even have a little more political power. I think it's great that you have the Congress people and the senators from our state on your show and other people to open our eyes, and hopefully more people will listen.
Kurt, you have a great day. Thank you, brother.
Thank you.
580-5436, 580-KIDO. That's really what it comes down to. You can either, going back to that movie The Matrix, you can either take the red pill and get out of Wonderland, or you can take the blue pill and you go back to everything is wonderful, everything is great, except the United States of America. And the scary part about what we're seeing, and this is not bashing the young people, we have to save them, we have to educate them, we have to inspire them, is that how many of them, if they voted, would say, yeah, we should, never mind the Mexican-American War, we should just give the land back. If you give it back, then what do you have? If you give away Kevin Miller, KIDO Talk Radio, nothing. And who wants to be on the other end of that stick? Not me, not Idaho, and certainly not America. All right, you're right, Ray and Maya. We've got to get rolling. Otherwise, I could hear this song forever and ever. Good morning. Kevin Miller in the morning, KIDO Talk Radio, 107.5 FM, 580 AM. Your home for Sean Hannity afternoons. Kevin Miller mornings, talking about the state of the Middle East, talking about the mullahs chanting death to America. Why? Because Donald Trump called them out for what they are, the Revolutionary Guard, nothing but a bunch of thugs and terrorists, and have been that way for years. And, oh, yes, those of you that are opining, those of you that are longing for the days of good old former President Obama, well, he gave a speech recently, and get this, he only mentioned himself just short of 400 times. Obama did this, Obama did that. Thank you, Obama. Boy, Kind of like absence makes the heart grow fonder. Not really. Let's go back to your calls. We go to Dean in Kuna with Kevin Miller, KIDO Talk Radio. Good morning, Dean.
Good morning. I'd just like to point out some inconsistencies in your argument. Since you claim to be all red-pilled, the Taliban in Afghanistan are Sunnis. The only people they hate more than Americans are Shiites, which are Iranians. The Taliban is supported by our buddies, Saudi Arabia. Then over in Syria and Iraq, the ISIS, they're Sunnis as well. And the only people they hate more than us are Shiites, and they're supported by Saudi Arabia. And if you claim to be red-pilled and you say, oh, all this disinformation and false news against the President of the United States, what makes you think you're hearing the real stuff that's happening in the Middle East?
What makes you think that you know what you're talking about?
Well, I'd like you to name 2 instances of terrorism that Iran supported. Just name 2 instances.
Look, yeah, sure. Hezbollah, Hamas,
Yeah.
they've supported them for years. Let's
Yeah,
go
but
to the
what
hold on.
terrorism
You've asked me
Yeah,
for
okay.
some
Yeah.
specifics.
listen.
Can I give that to you or not?
Yes. Go ahead.
Let's go back to the IEDs. Let's go back to them supporting the insurgents in Iraq. Let's go back to all those things. Let's go back since 1979, what the Iranians have done. By the way, why are you so pro-Iranian?
I'm not pro-Iranian. I'm pro-American. I don't think we should be there, first thing. But second thing, I grew up with the Iranian expatriates in Southern California. So I'm an evil Californian. I know that. But when you listen to them, America has screwed Iran constantly because we want to control the oil. I mean, America supported England's invasion of Iran back during World War II because Iran wanted to be neutral, and they were building a pipeline from Iran across Turkey to Europe to supply oil to the Nazis. I'm not agreeing with that. I'm just saying that was their deal. It was not us. We weren't even in the war at that point when Iran invaded. When England invaded Iran, we were neutral at that point, pre-Pearl Harbor. In '79, the embassy workers in Iran, in Tehran, when they took over the embassy, those guys were trying to throw a color revolution against the Iranian government. They were causing all kinds of dissent, and they were supplying weapons and training to the Communist Party of Iran. That's why they took over the embassy. They didn't just randomly take over the embassy. They had reason for it. And I'm not saying you should take over an embassy because that's like diplomatic faux pas. They should have expelled everyone, but they took over the embassy because of a cause. It wasn't just random. And ISIS and the Taliban are supplied by Saudi Arabia. Iran doesn't support either of those governments or movements. It's the Saudis that are supplying the IEDs. So I was just wondering, can you name another instance of terrorism that Iran supported?
I think, Dean, with all due respect, you're an apologist for the Iranians.
Okay, let's just say I am. That doesn't make me wrong.
How old are you?
I'm 53.
Okay, so you remember what went on in '79. You're a couple years older than me. You remember Mike Wallace interviewing the Ayatollah, and the Ayatollah was going to be a good Ayatollah. And we were all down with that, and then Carter cut the legs out from under the Shah. I have never, and it doesn't mean that I know everything, as you've pointed out fairly. I have never heard, and I've known Mark Bowden, he's interviewed those folks, anything that we were the embassy was supporting anything to do with the Communist Party in Iran. This is the first I've heard
they
of
were.
it.
Yeah.
Well, no. That's what you say. Just like you've questioned.
That's why I said
No. What you've said. I didn't say that. I'm saying that's what you've said. Just like you've questioned what I've said.
Yeah.
Look, I remember '79, and I am not down with the Iranians, and I can't believe that you would say that we've screwed over the Iranian people after what they've done to us, what they continue to do to us, and
what have they done to us?
Let's go back to 1979. Let's go back to what they did to Pastor Saeed. Are you going to say that Pastor Saeed deserved that?
Yeah, he did.
Okay.
He's
I love the talk, and Dean, God bless you, brother. God bless you. Nothing good can come of our conversation, sir. Good morning, Dave.